It feels like pretty much every game that I've been playing lately is a point-and-click choose-your-own-adventure style game, but when I saw the art that Prim has to offer, I knew I needed to check this one out. Throughout this game, we are going to be playing as Prim, the unknowing daughter to Death, and once her mother passes away, we're gonna have to join him in the land of the underworld and get up to some wacky hijinks. One more quick note before we get into the actual game here. I actually received this game for free as a review copy. I was not paid in any way, shape, or form for this review. I only received the game for free, so I'm still going to be giving the exact same style review as I would give for any other game, but just wanted to let you know that I did receive this game for free. Thanks for watching. The game very quickly gets into our first achievement, Snip, for cutting a life string. This is what happens when someone passes over to the land of the dead in this world. The game begins with our mother Morwen passing over into the land of the dead. Here she runs into our father named Thanatos, who isn't super happy to see her there because that means he's gonna have to step back up and become a real father figure in Prim's life. He can't really exist in the real world though, so he's gonna have to go ahead and bring us to him to make things work. Jumping back over to the mortal world, we find that our main character Prim is also dealing with her mother's death at the same time. We've gone up into the attic of our old house with our friend Tristan to try to look around and find something. We're not really sure. We notice that one section of the floorboards looks a little bit different from the rest of the attic, and we go ahead and pry that up. It's about to be our 16th birthday, and our mother had the foresight of leaving a present for us, which happens to be her camera. We also find a weird box with a skull on it that we can't seem to get open yet. Unfortunately, the camera didn't have batteries, but it's pretty easy for us to go ahead and send Tristan out to go pick those up, and he also brings us a cookie. We go ahead and eat that cookie to earn the achievement, Come to the Dark Side, We Have Cookies, a real classic name there. We use the flash on our newly powered up camera to shine some light on the side of the attic that we haven't previously been able to see, and we notice a glowing skull amulet. We bring the amulet to that box, and we find that inside are just some regular old pictures that our mother took of us and our friends and our time growing up. That is until we get to the final picture of the bundle, and we find this weird, very bony looking man in one of the photographs. We don't have very long to process this new picture that we just found though, as a portal opens up in the attic and Death steps in. Luckily, this is just as Tristan was walking away because the attic was a little too creepy for him, so he didn't see Death come in, but now he's gonna be left to wonder what happened to Prim. So now fast forward a couple of days, and we're beginning to get adjusted to living with our father in his cool little bachelor pad. You might be thinking, our mother just died and we're now in the land of death, so surely we can all hang out as a family. Well, unfortunately, our mother has kinda moved down the queue in line, and we can no longer see her as she's passed along to the next area. So surely this game's gonna be about going to find her, right? Thanatos informs us that it was always the plan for our mother to remain in the land of the living and take care of us while he stayed down here and took to his work. But unfortunately, that didn't really work out, and we don't actually believe what he's saying, honestly. We express how much we hate being here and don't want to live with Thanatos, and he decides to go ahead and lock us in our bedroom until we get a better attitude. So now you know what we need to do. But first, we need to really quickly earn the achievement Naysayer for clicking on the wooden rocking horse. Our first idea is obviously to just go ahead and try to jump out of the window, but Thanatos actually kind of planned for that and put a bottomless pit right below it, so that's not an option. Something that is an option though is this mysterious box that just arrived on our windowsill containing a one-eyed spider monster. Eventually we manage to corner and trap the spider monster, and we get a new best friend. We're gonna go ahead and call him Goggle. You know, we left Tristan behind in the land of the living, and we're already making friends here left and right. It might not seem wise, but the bond between trapper and trappee runs very deeply, and now that we have Goggle in our pocket, we can go ahead and use him to slide between the crack in the door to try to let us out into the main room. So now we get to play a small section of the game as Goggle. We find right outside of our bedroom, Thanatos is chilling smoking a pipe. Goggle manages to track down some herbs that are sitting on a nearby shelf, and one of them happens to have an effect that will make the smoker a little bit sleepy, so you can probably see where this is going. We turn the radio off, which causes Thanatos to walk over and try to fix it, and we go ahead and spike his pipe. When we check back in, the old bag of bones has fallen asleep. Now, I wouldn't have expected a bone man to need to sleep, but I guess it's a stressful job. Goggle sneaks over to grab his keys, which we can then use to get out of our locked bedroom. So we use those keys to exit the bedroom, and it pretty much immediately seems like we've been caught as our Aunt Carrie's appears in front of us. But she actually informs us that she actually is the one that dropped Goggle off on our windowsill, and she can go ahead and install the eyeball that is Goggle into our skull, so now we have a cool thing called Spidey Vision. We'll get more on that later. It also turns out that Carrie's is even more useful than that, as she informs us that she will be willing to grant us a visit to go have one last meeting with Tristan to try to explain what happened to him. Unfortunately though, while she can tell us that we can go back and visit, she doesn't actually know the way to open up a portal back to the mortal world. Only Thanatos does. That's when we get into our Spidey senses that we now have. We can use Goggle to click on a person and then click on an object to see if they have any secrets related to that thing. This doesn't come up a whole lot, but it's very convenient for us now that we can figure out how to open up one of these portals. It seems a little weird that Carrie's has forgotten how to open up those portals to the mortal world though, so we decide to inquire a little bit, and we earn the achievement A Tragic Past, as we uncover that when Carrie's was young, she accidentally fell in the river Styx and drank a bunch of the water. It probably should have killed her, but instead it just made her memory exceptionally poor. Using our Spidey senses, we can determine that the way Thanatos opens up the portals is by putting a record on the gramophone. We don't know which is the correct record though, so we go ahead and try them all, which earns us the achievement Music Junkie. There are a couple options here like Dead Sheeran, but we end up going with Joe Stygian. That is the correct one to open up the portal. So with the correct track on, the portal is open, and it's time for us to go take a visit with Tristan. Just as we step through the portal though, we end up taking a little bit of a jump over back to the mortal world, where we will now play as Tristan for a minute. This was a little bit strange because I didn't think that was part of the game, but it'll just be for a pretty short section. This is also the first scenery in this game that really blew me away. I don't know what it is, but this shot right here in particular, everything just looks so vibrant even though there aren't a whole lot of colors being used. Just the shading and everything, just it looks so good. Like I said, Tristan's section of this game is quite short. We have a little puzzle where we need to coax the donkey back to the cart by using the different colored berries that correspond with the donkey named Rainbow's hat. Pretty easy stuff once you kind of figure out what's going on here. Just as Tristan gets everything back into place though, Prim's portal opens up and she happens to come out right next to Tristan. Before walking over to Tristan though, of course we have to pay a compliment to Rainbow the donkey, where we earn the achievement Nice Hat. After talking to Rainbow though, we quickly spot Tristan and walk over to greet him. We're so excited to see him, but things don't seem quite right with him. Actually, they seem pretty bad. He seems afraid of us, even though he would have been so excited to see us just moments ago. It seems like our time in the underworld has changed us in some way, and Tristan is so afraid of us he actually almost runs off a cliff instead of coming anywhere near us. Luckily for him though, we managed to reach out and grab him, pulling him back before he careens off the cliff. But unfortunately for him, as we touch him, something appears to happen and his soul appears to be sucked out of him. No joke intended. The soul floats away up into the sky. The portal that we came in through opens back up, sucking us inside, and we immediately come face to face with Carrie's once again, who we of course have to come clean to because what just happened? We killed our best friend. Carrie's informs us of the obvious. We're Death's daughter, and now that we've been in the underworld, we've inherited some of his properties, and somebody probably should have warned us about them. As forgetful as Carrie's is, she does happen to remember a way that we could potentially bring Tristan back to life if we act quickly though. We need to attempt to perform the Orpheus method of resurrection, which involves us going down to the harbor to retrieve Tristan's soul, going to speak to the fates to get his cut life thread, finding a phoenix somewhere to get a feather for rebirth, and also stopping by the fates one more time and convincing them to give us back the key to get into our aunt's laboratory that is, for some reason, in their bar. Apparently Carrie's forgot to pay the rent and now they've foreclosed on it. but we need to get it back to get this Orpheus method completed. Caries tells us not to tell Thanatos about this, and in fact, we should try to convince him that we've had a change of heart about staying in the underworld, and we want to go out into the world and get a better understanding of what's going on down here. Thanatos agrees to let us head out into the world, and he actually gives us some advice. If we see some playing cards sitting out in the world, we should go ahead and grab them up because we can use them to play a cool little mini game called Casketball. There are a ton of cards to collect, and there is even some story relevance here, so we'll need to keep an eye out for all of them scattered around the world, as well as people to play the game with. So now it's time for us to step out into the beautiful open world as we earn the achievement Let's Save a Soul for finishing up part 1 of the game. The first thing we notice stepping outside is the Book of the Dead, which has an absolute ton of listings about all of the things that are dead in these lands. I started out by attempting to read every page of this book, but it turns out that it's actually pretty huge with a bunch of references to what I assume are Kickstarter backers and all sorts of other things, but we managed to click all the way through it to earn the achievement Bookworm. We find our first couple Casketball cards, as well as a weird little well and a little undead chicken guy, but there's not a whole lot for us to do next to Thanatos' house for right now. Instead, it's time for us to hit the road, and our first stop is out near the Fate's house at the Misty Moira Tavern. Outside of the tavern, we find a siren named Echo, who just so happens to be in love with one of the Fates that live here. He's a singer, so he could try to make a grand song to impress his love, but he made a fool of himself the first time he came around here, and the Fate's two sisters aren't huge fans of him. He even went as far as cutting his own heart out to give it as a gift, but that didn't seem to work either. This is a video game, so of course we get a side quest from Echo where we need to go convince the Fate's sisters that he's a good guy and him and his partners should be allowed to be together. So now we need to do some market research on the other Fates and figure out what kind of allergies they have, pets they like, things they like to do, that sort of thing. And there will be a quiz later. Being that Echo is a singer, we decide to ask him some questions, which leads us down a rabbit hole of asking about what happened to old Joe Stygian, that guy that opened the portal for us earlier. Turns out apparently he owed the Fates some money, and they decided to enact revenge. What that means, not too sure yet, but we do earn the achievement, The Tragedy of Joe Stygian, so it can't be anything good. I'm keeping a sharp eye out for things to interact with. We even pick up the Fate's doormat, which earns us the achievement Careful Observer. We even get a Casketball card for our trouble. Once we've sufficiently clicked on everything on the outside, we decide to go ahead and head inside the Misty Moira, where we are immediately greeted by the screaming head of Joe Stygian. We attempt to muzzle him, but we accidentally get bit twice, earning the achievement Bite Me Twice, Shame on Me. We successfully cork the head of Joe Stygian and stick his skull in our pocket. After that, we can finally get in to talk to the first Fate that we meet, Lachesis. Lachesis says that her sisters are around here somewhere, but we're not really sure where they are. We'll probably bump into them later or something. Luckily for us though, it turns out that Lachesis is actually the Fate that Echo has the huge crush on, and it turns out that their love might be a two-way street, except her sisters don't really approve. So we strike a little bit of a deal. If we can convince the siblings that Echo's a good guy and they should be allowed to go out, we'll get access to our aunt's lab. Seems like a fair deal to me. We're working on this quest for Echo to find out things about the Fates, so obviously we have no choice but to head upstairs and start looking through their stuff. We find some interesting information about some allergies and some pets, but we also decide to shut the drawer and cover up our tracks, earning the achievement Me? I haven't searched your stuff. With everything in the Fates' home sufficiently touched, we decide to make our way over to the Forbidden Forest, where Carrie's told us we might be able to find a phoenix. Also inside the Forbidden Forest, we find the goddess Persephone and her dog Cerberus waiting and arguing with a skeleton man who is chained up to a tree named Henry. While Persephone is the queen of the underworld, she is also sort of a goddess of life, and she wants to bring some flowers into the Forbidden Forest, and obviously the people that are here aren't super big fans of that. This is honestly probably the most disappointing quest line in this game. I feel like we don't really get any resolution between these two by the end, so we'll mostly skip past this. One super neat thing about this questline though is that we do get to pet all three of Cerberus's heads, which earns us the achievement Justice for Cerberus, leaving no head unpetted. The river is raging, so we can't get any deeper into the forest to find that phoenix, but we can investigate in Spruce's mouth and find a book on ventriloquism and a rope. Another nice thing about this area is that it also happens to give us our 8 total Casketball cards, so now we can officially have a full deck and we can start playing some games. Our first move is to go ahead and challenge Henry because, he's just been up in a tree for so long, how good could he possibly be? Casketball is a pretty simple game. There are 4 different stats that you need to look at. Your IQ and your strength that you want to be high, and your speed and your fumble percentage that you want to be low. Whoever is leading the round will have first pick as to which category they want their cards to compete in, and then the top card of the opponent's deck will be flipped forwards, which will then reveal and battle the cards with the better stat winning out. We managed to win our first match, but it is a little bit rough. We will definitely need to improve as we get into the harder and harder battles, but honestly, first impression, I really like this game. After getting a couple games of Casketball under our belt though, it's time for us to head down to the harbor and see if we can get Charon to take us out into the river to find Tristan's soul. We managed to track down Charon at the boat rental service, but unfortunately he isn't super interested in taking us out on the water for free. Normally we would pay for this ride with the golden obol we were buried with, but we didn't come here by conventional means. The only thing that Charon is willing to bargain with is a super rare Casketball card. So rare, in fact, only one person owns it, and it's our father Thanatos. So we're going to need to get really good at that game to win that card back, and we're not there yet, so we'll come back. Walking past the harbor, we find the river where that super fast flowing water is coming from. So maybe if we can go ahead and put something in the water to block it, such as a dam, we'll be able to cross further into the forest. It seems like IKEA might have screwed us and we were having a little bit of trouble getting the dam put together, but it turns out that we didn't actually receive a package for a dam, we instead received a package on how to build a catapult. At least we earned the achievement Master Constructor for getting it put together though. It turns out that a catapult really actually works better for our purposes than a dam would anyway. We can use the catapult to launch some building materials over to the Zombeaver across the water from us, who will build his own dam, blocking up the rushing water. The river dries up very, very quickly. I guess that's just an underworld thing, but it allows us to cross over and find a very old sleeping phoenix. We uncork the screaming head of Joe Stygian, which scares the adult phoenix and bursts it into flames. The phoenix successfully rebirths back into an egg, but now that the nest is on fire, we can't grab it. We'll come back to this as well. I backtracked to the Fates house to try to utilize some of the new items that we've obtained since we've been here last, and we managed to earn the achievement Professional Ventriloquist for using the ventriloquism book on Echo. After wandering around for a little bit more, I decided to go ahead and backtrack back to Thanatos' house and attempt to play our Aunt Carrie's in a little game of Casketball. It turns out though that Carrie's and Thanatos are quite a bit better than the other people that live in the realm though. They are a giant jump up in skill, and even though we take an early lead, Carrie's ends up absolutely crushing us. The best method here is to grind out getting new cards against the worst players before challenging her. This is definitely the section of the game that I spent the longest time being stuck at. I wandered around a lot trying to figure out what my next step should be, and it actually turns out that what we need to do is use the various alarm clocks on Lachesis to be able to wake up the other Fates, as they all share one body. The other siblings are Atropos and Clotho, and Atropos actually gives us a very useful bit of knowledge that the cut life string from our friend Tristan is actually out in their garden and the cat is playing with it, so now we have a target acquired. We send Goggle out into the garden to try to recover the ball of string that the cat is playing with, but instead we actually stumble upon a dead flower that we bring back. A dead flower seems like an interesting inclusion, so we decide to run back to the Forbidden Forest to meet with Persephone, the one person that we know that has the power to summon flowers. Flower power. But for some reason her powers don't work, and just in our time of need, we actually manage to touch it and bring it back to life. Freaky. With that distraction out of the way now though, we decide to head back to the Fates house where we will summon Clotho, the owner of the cat, to get it out of the garden. We send Goggle back out into the garden to recover the ball of string, but just as we grab it, the cat returns to the garden and we get to play another minigame. This is Game of Gnomes, where we need to attempt to get Goggle inside the house without the cat getting us. This minigame is honestly more annoying than anything. After a couple of attempts, we kind of figure out what the deal is here. We can move Goggle one space as well as our blocking gnome one space, while the cat can move two spaces. So we just get ourselves in a position where the gnome will always block for us, and we earn the achievement Number 1 for finishing the game. We retrieved Tristan's life string from the ball of yarn, and there's no real reason for us to keep it anymore, so we decide to bring it back out into the garden for the cat, which earns us the achievement Animal Lover. He's a good kitty. This is the point of the game where I decided to go on my biggest Casketball training arc. The method here, as I mentioned before, is to go challenge all of the other people around the Land of the Dead as many times to play over and over again as you can, and eventually you will collect all of the cards that you can have in your deck for the most part. Once you've taken all of them out, you can challenge carries and do the same thing to collect even better cards. If you're going for all of the achievements in this game, there is really no reason not to farm all of the other people first before challenging carries, and then do all of the carries farming before challenging Thanatos. You're going to need to collect all of the cards anyway to get all of the achievements, so it makes a lot of sense to get the best possible deck that you can before going on to challenge the hardest fight of the game. I included a little overview of the deck that I used to take Thanatos down here, because I could definitely see this being the part of the game that a lot of people get railroaded at, and I have seen some comments of people saying that the game really kind of falls off a cliff when you hit this mandatory minigame section. The strategy I employed was taking the 8 cards with the lowest fumble percentage, and the main thing that you need to focus on is knowing the breaking points for all of the different stat lines in your deck and Thanatos' deck. For example, 8.5 is the lowest possible speed, so anything around there will probably beat your opponent. Same thing with low fumble rate, and that was my focus. Eventually, we managed to beat our dad, and we earned the achievement Casketball Champion and get the super rare card. That super rare card actually isn't the final Casketball card that we need though. The one thing that I had to look up about this game was where the final Casketball card was located, behind Charon's shack. Here we earn the achievement Card Spotter and Casketball Completionist for picking up every single card. We bring our super rare card to Charon, who happily makes the exchange and agrees to take us out onto the water to look for Tristan's soul. We really get to know Charon while we're in the boat, and this super tall, powerful god of the river actually turns out to be a little bit more sans Undertale under all those robes. While we're floating down the river with Charon, we also see a couple of souls come up to the surface to talk to us. While we talk to all of them, we earn the achievement Famous Last Words, but unfortunately for us, none of these are Tristan's, so we need to keep looking. Charon takes us to the one person who can find any soul that is currently in this river. That would be this sea witch coach named Bella, who is hanging out with all of these souls, but she can't seem to get their attention. We try out all of the items that we have to try to get her attention and maybe get her to help us, but none of them seem to work, so clearly we've missed out on something and we head back to the mainland. The thing that I missed out on is actually pretty easy to miss out on in my opinion. We do a little bit of an investigation into that flower we brought back to life earlier, and it turns out that it's a diuretic. We bring that to Cerberus to get him to go and hopefully progress the Persephone storyline, but it doesn't seem to work out the way I intended it to. I was pretty confused why this didn't work, because it seemed like the whole plot line that Henry and Persephone were building to here, but I guess I'll come back later. There is actually one more thing that we can do now that we've uncovered all the things that there are to uncover about the Fates. We can go talk to Echo and tell him that we've got all of the information he needs for his song, and it's time to perform and impress the sisters. Echo goes into the Misty Moira and sings a song for each of the 3 siblings. In these songs, he needs to spell out some facts about each of them, and we help him from outside the door. Honestly, it seems like he didn't really learn his lesson because he doesn't know anything about these people and we had to share it to him. But I guess that's not our problem. We get access to our aunt's lab from Lachesis now. Returning to the Fates house also gives me an idea. Turns out we need to use the diuretic on Clotho's cat, which we can then use to bottle up the urine. Oh joy. We spray the cat urine on the burning phoenix egg, which then causes Cerberus to come over and put the fire out. This kinda seems like it might be sacrilege or something, but I guess we're new in town, we don't know the customs. We can't hatch the phoenix egg all on our own though, so we return to that chicken we saw at the very start of the game, and it decides to raise this phoenix egg as if it's its own. When it comes time for us to go ahead and collect our new baby phoenix though, the egg has other ideas and it decides to hop directly down into the well right next to us. It's always something in these point-and-click adventures, isn't it? We hop into our trusty bucket and rope and make our way down into the well, where we find a totally normal woman named Medi who is combing her hair in a mirror. Oh yeah, just a regular woman trapped down in a well. Nothing's going on here, it'll be fine, I bet. It turns out that Medi's sister is actually the river monster that we met previously that was trying to corral all of those souls. Medi wants to help us out and go track down the phoenix that just fell down into her well, but unfortunately she's not ready for the day yet. And as a matter of fact, Bella, the river monster, actually accidentally took Medi's hairbrush with her that she needs to finish getting ready. So if we could run out and get that hairbrush, she could definitely help us out and find that phoenix in a jiffy. And in order to get Bella's attention, she gives us her whistle. Charon takes us back out onto the river and we use the whistle, and Medi was absolutely right. We take complete control of all of the dancing souls and Bella is very grateful. What's not so great though is when Bella informs us that Medi is actually intentionally trapped down in that well by Bella, Athena, and the Fates. Turns out that Medi did some pretty messed up stuff in regard to her goddess Athena, and she needed to be punished, and she hasn't really taken a full lesson yet. If we were to bring her hairbrush, she will probably be able to escape, but we really need that phoenix egg. We'll need to grapple with that decision for a minute, but we do actually manage to get some more forward progress here as Bella is able to grant us one of our wishes. She is able to pull Tristan's soul up to the surface and we can go ahead and grab it. Unfortunately, he's kind of in a zombie-like state right now and he can't talk, but we'll get him back soon enough. So now to get Tristan back resurrected, we are only missing the phoenix feather. We're so close we can taste it, and we decide to make a snap decision. We distract Bella with trying to find another soul, and we throw Goggle over to go ahead and grab that hairbrush out from under her. It's a tough call, but we really need that feather. It's a little late now, so we have to go ahead and return back to Thanatos' house for the night. I guess Tristan's soul can wait a little longer. Thanatos also does do something very nice and gets us a new camera for our birthday though. So sweet of him. We snap a quick picture of Thanatos and he decides to take some pictures of us right back. This is the first time that we're really seeing Thanatos' personality and we're really getting some good bonding time together. So this begins the montage where Prim and Thanatos decide to head out into the world tonight and take a bunch of pictures all around the world with all of the characters that we've met so far, including Cerberus, Persephone, Ceres, Henry, and the Fates. This is a pretty cool sequence and it does show that we're really starting to get along with our dad even though it's been just one day, and like I mentioned before, the game really made it seem like the Tristan stuff was urgent and now we're taking a break to go do a photo op. Our father-daughter trip out does give us some pretty interesting results though as we get a pretty big lore drop. It turns out that Morwen got very sick when she was a child and almost died. Fortunately for her, she managed to recover, but she did spend some time in the underworld where she got acquainted with Thanatos. And unlike most people, she wasn't afraid of him, she was actually very nice. It's a little bit of a problematic age gap, but later on they managed to reconnect and eventually Prim was born. Thanatos tried to be there as a father, but his job is just too time consuming and they made the agreement that he would stay down here and work on being the Lord of the Dead or whatever, and Morwen would raise Prim. Kinda sad all in all. Our timer has sufficiently ticked down at this point, so the next morning we decide it's time to get a move on once again, and we return back to the well to give Medi her hairbrush. Unfortunately though, as maybe everyone on Earth probably could have predicted, Medi is actually a little bit evil. Who would have possibly thought that Medi was actually short for Medusa, and getting that hairbrush allowed her to unbrush those snakes that she had been keeping under wraps. Luckily for us though, we have enough time to close our eyes, and now we have our camera with the high-powered flash in hand, and we can go ahead and snap a quick picture to blind the snakes and give us a little time. This begins the only real boss fight of this game. Medi has 3 hair snakes, so we need to get Goggle out and try to find 3 different ways to kill these hairs. The first solution of knocking the hairdryer into the water and electrocuting a snake was pretty easy, but then I spent a long time trying to figure out the second solution with no luck. I was actually moving to leave when I noticed a stone that was sitting out nearby, and it happens to be covered in lice. This boss fight is classic point-and-click adventure all the way down, where we need to use some items in unconventional ways to take out all of these snakes. It was a little frustrating and I took way longer than I should have, but it was a good fight overall. Eventually though, we fall out of our high horse, or high bucket I suppose, and we're left trapped on the ground while Medi talks to her goddess Athena. However, we have a way out as we can use our ventriloquism book to convince Medi that Athena is mad at her. Medi decides to leave and go after Athena, and surely this will have no repercussions. Even though Medi is gone, we are laying on the floor of this well with no way back up top. Goggle is knocked out of our head, and the Phoenix is trapped in a cage. It seems like all is lost until Thanatos manages to track us down and pulls us straight back out of the well. He's questioning what we were doing down there, and we tell him we accidentally released a super powerful force into the world, so now Daddy gets to go clean that up. So now we're left with a baby phoenix that doesn't have feathers yet, but luckily for us, the Fates have just opened up their timeline terrace where we can slowly walk along a path to age ourselves up, as well as the phoenix in our pocket, so we can go ahead and pluck those feathers out. Kind of a convoluted solution, but it is what it is, I guess. So now that we have the life thread, Tristan's soul, the phoenix feather, and the key to get into Carrie's lab in pocket, we return and speak to our aunt and tell her that it's time for us to perform the Orpheus method. The screen fades as Chapter 2 ends and we earn the achievement Ingredient Collector. We take a quick trip over to Fatesville where we finally get a look at our aunt's laboratory. This place is absolutely decked out and it's clear why we probably shouldn't have been in here without parental advisory before. Carrie's has a machine established here that we can use to easily perform the Orpheus method, as it will have all of the instructions and order that we need to do things in. Unfortunately though, Thanatos has followed us here, so now Carrie's needs to go out in the hallway and distract him. She tells us not to perform the method on our own, but apparently time is super important now and we have no choice but to proceed. Luckily for us, Carrie's wasn't lying when she said the computer will pretty much completely guide us through completing the Orpheus method. She happens to have all of the required items that we need to start the process in the room, and we can go ahead and walk around and collect those and put them in the correct order to begin the process. Once we've done the first layer of ingredients, it's time for us to put the phoenix feather, life thread, and soul into the machine as well. But following that, the computer gives us some interesting instructions. We actually need to ask ourselves what the final step is. Of course, to ask ourselves, we go ahead and approach the mirror in the corner of the room, and the mirror version of ourselves tells us to look at the 2 wooden boxes near the door. One of them contains the ingredient that we need to finish the process, and the other one is literally Pandora's box and will unleash evil upon us. We pick the box on the right, and unfortunately that was the incorrect choice, as Pandora's box opens up and all of these very scary looking ghosts fly up into the air and smash the machine we've been using for the Orpheus process, just as Thanatos walks into the room. As Thanatos busts into the room, we go ahead and confess to everything that we've been doing, and he actually apologizes for not informing us about our powers sooner. He's not a big fan of messing with the natural order of life and death, but he does have a solution for us to complete our journey and bring Tristan back to life, as he opens up a portal using Joe Stygian's head. We enter into an even stranger world, if you can believe it, where everything is entirely grayscale, except for one thing that happens to be the body of Tristan laying on the ground. This is pretty sad, but when we approach him, we touch him, and he actually seems to spring to life. Very weird. We tell Tristan about our new living situation, and he asks if we'll ever be able to come visit him again. We tell him probably not, as Thanatos appears and tells him that in fact we will be able to visit him in the future. Okay, getting even stranger now. Thanatos informs us that we are in a very unique position. Because we are the child of life and death, we have the ability to restore life to dead things, such as that flower in the forest earlier. So Thanatos is going to train us, and once we're all trained up, we will be able to pass through worlds and visit our friend again. Thanatos has the honor of revealing that our full name is Prim Reaper as he takes our hand and we leave this grayscale place we were in. But as that's happening, the camera pans out and we see that Morwen has been watching this whole scene unfold from the other side of the river with our camera. We earn the achievement and they decayed happily ever after for finishing the game, and we can now officially say we've done everything in Prim. So how did we do? Prim took me a total of just over 7 hours, though I did get stuck in, I guess, only really one place. You could do it faster than I did though, for sure, if you picked up on some of the smaller puzzles quicker than me. Overall, this isn't a super difficult point-and-click adventure game though. Some pros and cons with this game are actually pretty interesting. Huge pro, obviously the art style of this game is amazing. The use of black, white, grays, they all look really good. Every scene in this game was really amazingly animated and it looked super awesome. That was the first thing that drew me to this game, that caused me to request the key for it in the first place, and I was very impressed. The story was also good throughout the most part of the game. It was pretty consistent, though, like I mentioned, through the game, the kind of lack of urgency to get Tristan back at certain points was a little strange, especially like starting a big card tournament plot line in the middle. I can see why that makes some people go a little bit off of it, but I thought that it was fun. I would play an entire side game that was all about Casketball, honestly. I was having a great time. Speaking of, I think there are a lot of opportunities for sequels here if this game does well enough. Hopefully we get to see the devs do this same sort of thing one more time, or, you know, hopefully many more times in the future. That kind of leads me to a big downside of this game though. The marketing is a little bit strange. Prim is a fine name for a game. Prim Reaper, great reveal at the end. I didn't see that coming, but looking things up for this game is pretty tricky. You type in Prim and you get like prime numbers, and then if you type Primgame, you get like Metroid Prime and Prim from the Hunger Games. It's a little bit messy, but eventually you can find the information if you're really looking for it. But that being said, I haven't seen a whole lot of people talking about this game, and it's a real shame because this is a real hidden gem that hopefully some people will discover in the next couple months or years, and people could really fall in love with this game, just like I did. Overall, super happy with the game, and once again, thank you to the developers and the publishers for giving me this key for free to review this game. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next week as well. Please feel free to leave any comments you have about the video down in the comment section below, or other games you'd like to see me check out. As always, thank you so much for watching.
See you!